We're live. Chase, Kansas State, BYU preview. We are previewing maybe the hottest team in college not maybe. They are the hottest team in college basketball, the Kansas State Wildcats, coming off just some massive, massive wins in the Big 12. This team was done, dusted, dead. All of a sudden, this is almost a play-in bubble game, Chase.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a pretty big game here for both these teams. There's a lot of implications heading into here. It's not a ranked matchup. You're not going to see it talked about a lot on the stories. But if you're a Big 12 fan, if you're following BYU, obviously listen to this podcast. If you're following Kansas State, this is a huge game for both squads. And like you said, Karter, Kansas State, hottest team in college basketball. They've been cooking lately. I believe it's 6 wins in a row. They were 1-6 in conference play at one point, and now they are 7-6, fighting a way back into the bubble. Their name appears on Lunardi's sheet. They've beaten the likes of West Virginia, Kansas, Iowa State. Like, they're beating everyone right now, and it's fun to watch, but scary if you're BYU coming into this game.
And the other scary part if you're BYU is obvious trap spot, clear look-ahead spot, because you got Kansas State Saturday at home. And before this, probably a month ago, you're thinking, okay, BYU should win that game, no problem. Even though BYU is going to be probably favored in this game by 5 or 6 points in Vegas. But you go, okay, BYU should win this game or whatever. And then you look ahead, you go, oh, we got Kansas at home at the Marriott Center on Tuesday. And then we go at Arizona right after that. This is an easy look-ahead spot, and this is an easy trap game, Chase.
Especially, look, if you're doing if you're heading into conference play, right, and you're doing this kind of look ahead, planning ahead to like the big weeks and whatever, you're obviously circling this Kansas game and Arizona right after, and you're probably thinking, oh, we get a little warm up with Kansas State, right? We get a little like, oh, let's see let's a little fine tuning. Now it's like, wait a second, we're playing the hottest, most dangerous team in college basketball. They're beating everyone right now. So you've had to kind of change your mindset over the past few weeks. Because in college basketball, man, like you get 3 or 4 days to prepare, sometimes even less, right? And so they haven't thought about Kansas State until guess what? Tuesday night when they finished that West Virginia game. And so now they got to really dig deep, figure out what they're thinking of, and do the proper scouting. And they've had a lot of really good Kansas State film to watch, and I'm sure those assistant coaches, all 1,700 of them, are figuring out, right? Digging deep into knowing what they're going to do.
And this game, luckily, is bumped up to a quad 2 game, so that helps a lot. And if we think Kansas State plays, look, I don't think they're going to continue this trend and win out the regular season, but this is going to stay a quad 2 game regardless of what happens on Saturday, in my opinion. So there's that. And also, let's talk about the positive for BYU. Yeah, you want to be worried because it's a trap game and all that kind of stuff, but you're coming off a big, big win and a big confidence booster, winning, I think, your best game overall this season. Look, Baylor was at home. We kind of know who Baylor is. Winning that kind of game against West Virginia on the road and the way they did, and winning it basically at the very end with a go-ahead bucket with one of your bench guys, that is a huge confidence builder, on top of Yegor Demon hit some of the clutchest free throws I've ever seen. And so BYU, both these teams are coming into this game feeling real good about themselves.
They are. It's honestly a pretty good position for BYU, the way Kansas State's been playing, because this win might be more impressive than the Baylor win, dare I say. Like, this is the hottest team right now. Everyone's looking at Kansas State, right?
Yep.
It's not a huge story, but everyone knows what they're doing. It's well noticed by now. And so if you can pull off this win against K-State, right, I think that really says a lot to the committee and to the national media that, you're actually a legit team.
And it was Jerome Tang hot seat stuff a month ago. It was, all right, like, where's his next job going to be? Where does he want to go? And, Kansas State, where do they go to after this? They put a lot of money into this roster too, especially in a guy like Coleman Hawkins. So, but now they've completely switched everything. And Chase, when we were talking about previewing this game and watching the film on Kansas State, my number one consensus is, look, you look at the stats, a lot of the stats haven't been drastically different. it's the body language and the buy-in from what we've seen at the beginning of Big 12 play to where they are right now. They're playing much harder on defense, forcing teams into tougher shots. It's not stuff as much that shows up on the stat sheet, but in the game, the body language and the buy-in and the confidence is just building and building and building. And that's what's been so impressive for Kansas State recently.
Absolutely. Basketball's a game of momentum, and that carries from game to game. And Kansas State smells it in the water. They have a legit chance here. That thought the season was dead, thought their coach was fired, blah, 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 blah. They heard all the noise. They've had a chance to shut it all up. But I think they've done that to this point. And look, they don't want to stop now. And they got a winnable slate ahead of them, they feel like. And so it's a hot team. And look, Carter, like at the end of the day, this is what you want. You want these big games. You want these moments to prove yourself if you're both Kansas State and BYU. And so BYU, a month ago, you would have thought this was easy. Now, guess what? It's not. Coming into a hot team, and you got to figure it out and play good. Like, play some of your best basketball you have all season, because that's what this team's going to demand of you, the way that they've been playing.
Going into this game at the Marriott Center, I worry for the Rock Band's safety if BYU loses this game.
Honestly, it's like when they storm the field, they're going to have to like escort them out. But
yeah,
early if it gets to that point. Gotta keep our rabid fans away from them. Man, the comment section after that, there's like 17 mentions of the Rock Band, and all of them are like, I hate them.
They just start throwing tomatoes. Please don't do that if you're at the Marriott Center. But any BYU fans won't do that. But going into this game, we're big advocates on Saturday night basketball at the Marriott Center. The environment, or just Saturdays in general, the environment is usually really, really good regardless of the opponent. And it's also not a 9 p.m. tip-off like it was against Arizona. It's a 7 p.m. tip-off, big-time game. Hopefully it doesn't snow outside, so more people aren't willing to sell their tickets and everything. Hopefully we got some good weather, clear roads. Chase, I'll be honest, going into this game, I like BYU.
I kind of do too. We usually pick BYU, right? Which is,
but we are kind of pessimists usually about it,
right? And we said 100 times before the Cincinnati game that we're like, okay, this is a really tough spot for BYU. I'm feeling dangerous, and this is the perfect time to be like, it feels dangerous. And don't get me wrong, Kansas State is super dangerous. We've already said a million times how hot they are. But I do really like the position for BYU. I think they also have their own momentum. They've kind of fought their demons back again, right, against West Virginia, and you get to come back home. Like I said, this is a long home stint because you get 2 home games in a row, and you've had a big, long 4 days to think about and talk about this team. You're going to be playing in front of a bumping, sold-out crowd on a Saturday night. It's kind of the perfect position for BYU, and they're not going to underestimate Kansas State, and they have a chance to – I don't know if they're thinking too much, but there's always like this team's hot right now. Like, let's knock them off. Like, let's end their streak. Yep. Let's be the team that does that. So they have all that going for them. Also, Carter, we haven't even talked about kind of like the way they match up with Kansas State. I think they have big, long guards, right? Like in Yegor and even Richie and Dallin, who are oversized for their positions. They have the athleticism in Kaba down low. They could be able to stretch it out with Boscovich, which is what we've seen in the past couple games. And wouldn't be surprised if we saw some more of that here Saturday night. I kind of feel good about the Cougs. We don't usually feel like this. All right, we always end up picking BYU,
and that's a dangerous thing.
Exactly. We could be getting cut. We could be giving some more bulletin board material here, Carter.
No, we've been praising Kansas State for like 10 minutes.
That's true. That's true.
And the other thing I think that kind of got figured out, not just the Boscovich stuff and whatnot in that West Virginia game, I think a key thing is Yegor figured out that, hey, I can score the ball. I don't need to settle for threes. Drive to the paint. Use your size against these smaller defenders. And even though West Virginia was open as grill, playing real physical with them, he was able to still have success driving to the paint, causing fouls, getting to the free throw line, knocking those down. That's going to be key in this game too, is continuing to do that, because we talked about it over and over. Teams have watched a lot of film on Yegor and said, all right, we got to get up in his grill and force him into settling for threes and just get him out of his rhythm. Don't let him get into a game where he can pick his spots and find other people. Force him to be the scorer because he doesn't want to be. He wants to be unselfish. But I think he kind of figured out something in that West Virginia game, getting to the basket, which we've been huge proponents of for him and the other guards on this team to continue penetrating and getting to the basket. And that's going to continue to be key in this game.
Absolutely. It feels like every time we do one of these previews, I just feel like we're saying the same things because it's just so clear to me that this BYU team thrives so much when they get to the basket, they play up pace. Like that is how their style of basketball should be played. And the reason we keep saying it is because sometimes we see them come out and just not do it, right? And we're like,
yeah,
that's why we need to be like, that is the key to this game. They did it against West Virginia. It worked, right? We saw the fruits of that. So I absolutely agree. I think Kansas State does come in with a good defense that they've been playing. That's the vibe that I got watching these last few games. They go watch that Iowa State game and the way they played that team who was top 5 at the time. They were suffocating, man. And BYU struggled at times with, like you said, big suffocating guards who are going to get up in Jaeger and Dallin's grill. But I also think BYU's kind of settled into that style of play. At least it has looked like it from the West Virginia game and a couple other games here too. We're not just basing everything off of that one game, right, on Tuesday.
Yeah.
They've been able to settle and kind of adjust to the physicality of Big 12 play. No, Kansas is one of the more physical teams. So BYU needs to be able to fight through all that energy that they're going to bring and kind of give it back to them. Be physical back. Get to the basket. Get to the line. Knock down your free throws. And then defensively, of course, they do the same thing. The good news for BYU is I think Kansas State plays a little bit more like West Virginia than they do Cincinnati. Although Cincinnati was shooting the lights out, Kansas State likes to take things slower. They're not as great 3-point shooting team. In fact, BYU's taken 100 more threes this season. They played the same amount of games, by the way, than Kansas State. And what we see BYU struggle is when teams are shooting the lights out from 3, right? And BYU has struggled defending that. So that's not to say Kansas State can't get hot and hit some threes, but I think this favors and leans towards more of the West Virginia style than some of the other teams we've seen in the past, like Arizona and Cincinnati, who had a heyday against BYU.
Yeah, the Cincinnati one, we talked about it. They want to muck it up and all this stuff. They just got red hot, and that's what happened. If you're a guard that shoots 25% from 3, knocks down 6 of 8 from 3, you're probably going to win that game. But I 100% agree with everything you just said, and we keep saying the same stuff on these previews. Free throw shooting, man. Free throw shooting. If you're going to penetrate and get to the basket like you did against West Virginia, you know what was nice against West Virginia? When you shot the lights out from the free throw line. They ended up shooting 81% from the line, 13 of 16. That's going to win you a lot of ball games. But when you end up going 50% from the line in some of these games, that's going to be crucial too. This is simple basketball stuff for BYU to win these games. And yeah, we keep saying it. Drive to the basket and play up tempo and get this game in a more fast, frenetic pace than what Kansas State wants to play. Like you said, they want to be a little more slow, methodical. Not to say they can't knock down shots and play fast tempo, but BYU thrives in that style more than Kansas State does. And you talked about, like, sometimes BYU just doesn't do that. The most frustrating thing is when BYU sometimes the offense will run one action, and then if that action doesn't work, it's like a simple pick and roll. Then they just stand there and go, what do we do? And then 15 seconds goes by. All of a sudden, it's 7 seconds left in the shot clock, and they're playing hot potato on who can just chuck up a 3 before the shot clock expires. That is the most frustrating part about watching this BYU offense sometimes. And that's what they can't fall into in this Kansas State game.
You're completely right. And that's what kills BYU. That's why they lost. That's what happened in the last 7 minutes of Arizona, if you all can recall that.
100%.
That's exactly what happened. And then we started to be like, what happened in those last 7 minutes? They were awful. They didn't score at all. It's like, well, that's the reason. And I'd like to say, BYU plays better at home because I feel like they feed off the energy of the crowd and it makes them kind of just get the ball down the court, push it, just go. But they did fall into that against Arizona. The reason they fell into that against Arizona, though, Karter, is because they were falling behind and they felt like they needed to chuck up threes, right? And the buckets were so important in that moment. And so BYU needs to be able to push it, but they also need to be able to not turn the ball over. They still have a problem. Even that West Virginia game, even every game that we liked from BYU, they still had double-digit turnovers in, right? And so if they're going to be pushing it, if they're going to be aggressive, they're going to come out with this energy. Sometimes you get a little too skittish, right? Throw the ball away. Jaegor's had a problem. He's had, 3 or 4 in the last few games of just lazy passes, right? And we've talked about it a bunch of times where he just is assuming the guy's going to be open in the action. Got to be careful, especially if you're like, okay, let's go run and gun. Let's do it. Let's do it carefully so that we're not giving Kansas State free possessions and therefore free points.
Yeah. Before we do MVP and predictions, and then we'll do some Twitter questions after the break, I'm excited to see how Coleman Hawkins reacts to The Rock and the BYU crowd at the Marriott Center. That's going to be something to watch for in this game.
Yeah, he's one of college basketball's characters. I think if you follow college basketball at all, you know exactly who he is. And so it should be fun. Some good characters in the Big 12, man. And, having him come in, Dickinson coming in Tuesday, it should be a good time. And Tang, too. Like, Tang's a passionate guy. He wears his heart on his sleeve. They were here last year, right? Lost that game. I think they were up by a lot. Or was that TCU? I'm mixing up my purple teams. BYU ended up beating them. Is all I remember. So
might be mixing up purple teams. Who knows?
As could be, but it'll be great. It'll be, man. Like, if y'all are going to the game, show out because it's going to be great.
Rise and shout, fellas.
Let's feel the power of that Wasatch. Am I right?
Yeah, I know. Shout out. MVP and predictions. Who wins? How does it happen? And who is the MVP in the Kansas State BYU game?
All right. Well, I already kind of hinted at it. I do think BYU wins, and I think it's more comfortable. I mean, we always do this when we do like 3 or 4 point wins. I'm going to say BYU wins this game 79-70. They beat Kansas State. My MVP of the game, I'm not going to do anything too crazy. It's Richie time. It is time for him to show out and being at home. I feel like there was that moment where you just felt like Richie couldn't miss. And not that he's been bad at all. It's just you just hold Richie to a higher standard now. You have expectations for him. I expect him to be back to that Richie of a month ago, where it's just like, man, this guy can't miss. He feels like everything's red hot. I think he shows out from the home crowd, and he's your MVP.
This feels like a Trevin Nell game, doesn't it?
I said that last game. Here's my pick for MVP, if you remember, and I was dead wrong. So,
yeah, I feel like you're good for like 1-7. It's like, or 1-6. Like, all of a sudden he's like, wait, he made 5 threes in one half.
He's due. He's due for a big game. And
that's what I'm saying. I think he's due for a big game at home against Kansas State. I'm going with Trevin Nell as my MVP in this one. Knocking down a bunch of threes and giving BYU that lead, and then the other MVP's got to be making free throws. Free throws, offensive rebounding, and not turning the ball over. Simple basketball analysis. That's what it is. It's that simple of a game. Score prediction, I'm going to go a little higher scoring because I think there's a lot of fouls in this game. I'm going to go BYU wins 83-73. I think BYU pulls away at the end. I think it's, a 4-6 point game, and then BYU pulls away on some free throws at the end. I know. You don't like it.
Sign. It's a bad sign that we're both feeling pretty good about BYU.
I know. Well, it makes me feel better seeing the analytics say BYU's a 6-point favorite in this game. I'm like, really? And then think about it. I'm like, well, Vegas does make a lot of money, and they might know something.
It's true. Those guys are right more than they're wrong.
Yeah, so. That's true. Anyhow, let's take a quick break, and then we'll talk about some Twitter questions right after this. Chase, let's answer some Twitter questions. We'll start off with Zach at Zach Nelson121. Shout out. What do you anticipate the Cougs doing the same/differently to slow down this K-State team? What's the lowest percentage BYU can shoot from 3 and still win this game?
2 great questions, Zachary. The first question, I'm going to steal a little bit from you, Carter, because you mentioned this a little bit before we recorded. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a little bit of Bosco Kaba action. Putting both of them on the floor. Like I said, Kansas State doesn't shoot a lot of threes. It's not where the bulk of their offense comes from. It's from guys like Coleman Hawkins, right, who are big, long, physical dudes, and they like to get in the paint and score. Does BYU counter that with a big lineup of their own? You can't play Fusa and Kaba at the same time. Bosco's proven to be a guy who could play the 4 pretty well, even the 5 at a stretch. So could we see some length from them? I think so. I think we see a lot of Bosco this game.
I think we do too. And to slow down this team, it's going to sound weird, but I think it's to speed them up. I think that's the key, is speeding them up to slow them down, because BYU thrives in that offense when they are able to play run and gun, and it all stems from getting stops on the defensive end, getting long rebounds, and pushing the ball and getting out in transition. That's the key for them. And he talks about what's the lowest percentage BYU can shoot from three and win this game still. Well, I don't know if you watched Arizona versus Kansas State on Tuesday night. Let's just say it was a 3-point disaster class. These two teams shot a combined 3 for 41 in this game. Arizona shot 9%. Kansas State shot 5%. Kansas State shot 1 of 19 and still be arguably the second best team in this conference still. There is no rhyme or reason to this crap.
There really isn't. That is such a crazy stat. I mean, watch them just shoot 49%.
Yeah, I know.
Saturday.
That means they're just due for a great game against BYU, who teams have been red hot from three against.
Yeah. I think this BYU team is not as dependent on the three as last year's team, but it's still a big part. I think 30% is the
key,
absolute minimum. You have to be above 30% to win if you're BYU. Preferably, you want to be in the 35 range. If anything better than that is amazing, but I'm going to say 30 is like the threshold.
100% agree. Let's go. We'll answer Jack Carpenter last. Shout out. All right, we got Doug Dillard here at Dillard_Doug. BYU seems like it will always be a team that could lose in the first round by 25, but also make it to the Elite Eight, no problem. It's just a matter of what team decides to show up each game, which makes it hard to know what's going to happen and if we'll even make the tournament. And Chase, we talked about that. Consistency. That's what BYU fans want to see. They don't want to see this roller coaster ride of, okay, oh crap, you beat it, or you beat Arizona State, things are looking good, and then you lose a few, and then you go on a little 4-game winning streak, and then you lose 2, and now you beat West Virginia. The roller coaster ride is so frustrating for fans, and so it's just, you never know what team's going to come out on a certain night. I mean, that's college basketball in general, but especially true with this BYU team.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say, Carter, is you can say about 99% of the teams in college basketball. Go talk to an Iowa State fan, see how they're feeling right now. Go talk to a Kansas fan, see how they're feeling right now, right? Almost every single team in college basketball just has nights where you're like, wait a second, what was that? Like, that's the nature of the sport. So BYU, but to Doug's point and to your point, BYU seems like that even more so. And it's just happening like on a weekly basis where you're like, I saw this team here and now I'm seeing this team here. Not adding up, doesn't make sense. But BYU needs to figure it out. And I think Saturday is a really great time to do that. I think they have a chance in front of their home crowd. So
absolutely. Let's move on. We got EDub at E_win24. How will BYU defend Doug McDaniel? Not Creighton's Doug McDaniel. Or I was thinking Doug McDermott. I was thinking Doug McDermott. We'll leave that in the podcast. How will BYU defend Doug McDaniel? He's been the guy during this run for Kansas State, so shutting him down will be huge for the Cougs, but this could be another night where an underside guard goes off and BYU can't answer. And then he has a hot take, but I want to answer this question first. 2 words on how to stop Doug McDaniel. Mawit Mag. What we saw, I understand there's going to be different assignments that you might want him on. I love seeing him overwhelm these guards. What we saw Mawit Mag do against Javon Small at West Virginia on Tuesday night was a thing of beauty. And I understand Javon Small had like 9 assists in that game. He's the leading scorer in the Big 12 and got held to under double figures. That is huge. I think that is going to be utilized heavily in this game of Mawit Mag making Doug McDaniel's life hell if he gets matched up on him.
Yeah, that's like BYU's secret weapon that they discovered halfway through the season. Mawit is that guy to just neutralize your best player. The problem with Kansas State is, though, Carter, McDaniel's not their leading scorer, right? They look towards some of these bigger guys first. But to our guy Edub's point, he has been leading the charge. I mean, 24, 4 and 5, 15, 6 and 11, 22 and 5. Like, these are some stat lines that he's had over the past 4 games, and so he has been that guy. So you're absolutely right. The answer is Mawit Mag, and it's playing tight man-to-man defense, and it is tough, though. I mean, it's BYU's weakness. It's elite guards. But I think we saw something with Javon Small. That's the key right there.
Overwhelming them with Mawit Mag. I mean, you could just see like Javon Small was almost playing like the Steph Curry off-ball role where he is just sprinting around everywhere. A college example would be like Stephen Ashworth, where he just runs around everywhere on the court, just running in circles like a hamster wheel almost. And Mawit Mag was just sticky glue, gorilla glue on him, man. He did not let up at all. It was seatbelts all game. I think that will help, but it depends how they match up. And then he said his hot take is Kaba and Foose scored double digits in this game. Love it.
I love it too. That would be, that's great. That's stuff BYU needs. Like I said, everything around the basket are threes. That's what your shot chart needs to look like.
I will say, to his point, let's say we see a lot more. Let's say Boscovich takes some Foose minutes up, and let's say he doesn't play as well, and Foose comes in or whatever. Remember when Dallin Hall got benched, and all of a sudden Down came in pissed off in that game and kind of brought out something different that we hadn't seen so far this season in Down? That could be the case for Foose.
It could be. I mean, he's already coming off the bench, but if his minutes get taken away,
minutes get taken down a little bit.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and he feels like he needs to earn them back in some way. I can see the old Foose coming out, just going a rampage on Kansas State. Kansas State, they're in a position where they got really a plan for 3 bigs from BYU, and they're all drastically different. Like the play styles are completely different, and whoever's in, it changes BYU's offense completely. So that's a huge advantage if you're BYU, like being able to throw all 3 of those guys at them and just completely change things up.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the last question, and then we'll get out of here. Last but certainly not least, Jack Carpenter at Jack_Carpenter5. What's the best wing spot in Utah? Been here for 5 years and can't find a good place to save my life. B-dubs is mid AF. Chase, you got a response for my guy?
I'm not the guy to ask about wings. Mostly because there's just not any good ones like in Utah Valley. Let's be honest. Like the only ones off the top of my head are like wingers and wing nuts or like Wingstop, other than B-dubs. So
and B-dubs, yeah.
Sorry, Jack. I'd say like, dude, go find a nice.
Chase, you're a Hooters guy. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Is there even a Hooters in Utah? I don't think so.
There's gotta be, right? I mean, I doubt. Maybe one in Salt Lake. In Salt Lake,
I'll get stats department on it.
Get stats department on that. Here's this is what I'm gonna say. I'd find like I wouldn't go to like a swing specific place. I'd go to like a good barbecue joint or like a good like sports bar grill type vibe, and try out the wings there. Like see if they have decent wings for you. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because I personally kind of like B-dubs. I don't mind it. Good deals. It's like the McDonald's of wings, but like
it's
good stuff. I don't mind it.
Wingstop and B-dubs can get the job done. Breaking news: Hooters is permanently closed. I don't know when this happened, but
everywhere
in Utah, yeah. There was one in Utah in Midvale apparently, and she is no longer.
Shocker.
Should we read through some of the reviews?
Yes.
All right, let's see here. All right, we got to read some Hooters. Reviews. So of this permanently closed Murray Hooters. These reviews are from like 8 years ago, so this place must have closed before COVID. I'm looking at these right now. Here we go. Some dude said, worst Hooters I've ever been to. The girls out here don't even keep up the Hooters tradition, in parentheses, nothing to look at. Food had no taste, took an hour just to order, no refills. Nobody asked how our cold wings, soggy fries, and warm beer was. I'll never go back. I think the first part of his review is the reason why he's never going back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's cold wings and soggy fries, and the girls, not up to his standard apparently. So, dang, Jack, don't go to that permanently closed Hooters.
Whatever. But anyhow, yeah, no Hooters in Utah. My wing place, I guess that was the original question. My wing place is Wing Coop. Wing Coop up in Salt Lake. The wings aren't as big. It's not a bang for your buck kind of place. Elite Ranch, not a blue cheese guy. You a blue cheese guy, Chase?
Not a blue cheese guy. I'm a ranch guy.
I
don't want mold in my cheese. No thanks.
Yeah, blue cheese, Dookie Shoes cheese. Ugh, worst kind of cheese. Anyhow, Wing Coop, great ranch. It's not a bang for your buck place. It's a little on the pricier end of wings. It's not like big wings. They're really, really good. They're by far the best wings I've had in Utah. It's up in the Salt Lake area where I'm at. So great. I love Wing Coop. It's a little on the pricier end, though, because sometimes I'm like, rather just get a pizza. Like I love wings, but sometimes wings are just like, I don't want to pay that much for wings.
It's fair. It's fair, man. Like, that's why I'm like, go to a good barbecue place. Find a local joint that does wings. I think give it a shot. You know,
I'm not going to barbecue places in Utah.
it's fair.
Yeah.
It's
Anyhow,
fair. You're from Carolina.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Anyhow, all right. Well, that wraps it up. Make sure to subscribe at Church Ball Pod on everything, at Chase_Roger0, at Karter B8, at Church Ball Pod on everything. Make sure to follow. We will be at the Kansas State game on Saturday night. TBD if we go live. If BYU wins, we might go live, but it'll be decently late. So it'll be around like 10 o'clock Mountain Time if we go live on Twitter. Make sure to tune in, subscribe, do everything you got to do to help us out, and we will see you guys on Saturday at